Hello, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Dykers, and I'm the Executive Assistant to CSE Dean Moscave. I wanted to welcome all of you here today and give you some general information before we start. At any time throughout today's town hall, you can feel free to enter any questions that you have into the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible live, but we will also be answering them via text as we're able. I also want you to know that we are recording today's town hall, and the video will be posted on our UMN CSE YouTube channel by the end of next week. So we'll start out with some introductions, beginning with Dean Moscave.
Well, good afternoon, CSE graduate students. It's a delight to be with you today. And before I start with some opening comments, I'd like my colleagues to introduce themselves also. There's a group of us here from the Dean's Office. Associate Dean Ellen Longmire.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ellen Longmire, and I'm Associate Dean for Academic Affairs. And part of what I work on is graduate programs and interacting with grad students.
Hi, I'm Joe Constant. I'm an Associate Dean for Research in the college and a professor in computer science and engineering. And a chunk of what I'm responsible for is the Sunrise research plans and approving individual returns to on-site work for research activities that need to be done on-site.
And I am Paul Strakowski, Associate Dean for undergraduate programs and a faculty member in mechanical engineering. And I might dovetail in the conversation today for maybe TAs out there who are going to be engaged with our undergraduates in the classroom.
I want to point out that we have other staff with us, Jim Mcdonald, Director of the College of Science and Engineering Information Technology. I know obviously you are very much in need and involved with IT in your work, and particularly with all these Zoom connections. So Jim can help answer questions. And you also receive a lot of communications from the College of Science and Engineering, and our colleague here, Rhonda Zern, as well. Rhonda Wave is the Director of Marketing and Communications and Marketing for the College of Science and Engineering. So we hope we'll be able to answer some of your questions as well as just give you some broad set of information. So let me start again by welcoming you all to this particular meeting, but more so to a historic fall semester at the University of Minnesota in the College of Science and Engineering. I don't have to tell you, and you very well know, that we have been in highly unusual circumstances the past few months, and the situation that we're going to be facing is going to continue somewhat in the same vein in many respects in the coming months. We have obviously been faced with the challenges of the pandemic and the limitations that the COVID-19 virus and its aftermaths and its effects have on everything that we do, our social interactions, education, business, and so forth. But we've also had a sad and tragic situation with the murder of George Floyd close to us at the University of Minnesota, which then has led to a resurgence and new energy in having to examine and deal with social justice issues. And our college and some of you have certainly been engaged in activities related to that topic as well, and we can speak to those as we go along. On top of all of this, and I don't know how many of you are joining us from overseas, we have had particular challenges particularly for graduate students, many of whom we had admitted either as teaching assistants or research assistants from countries outside the US who have not been able to obtain the necessary visas to be with us during the semester. And as I know, some of you have are already taking courses perhaps online remotely from your home countries. So we very much hope that to be able to, as soon as possible, welcome you on campus as well. So it's a very, very different situation we're all operating under. And I want to really emphasize and guarantee that the university is doing its best. The College of Science and Engineering certainly is doing its utmost to do what we can do not to essentially disturb or pause your education, research, and other activities while respecting and trying to ensure, to the extent any one of us can do, your safety and security from pandemic and otherwise at the University of Minnesota, so that your, as I said, your education can continue uninterrupted. I also in particular want to thank the graduate students who have been working diligently on the research, as well as the critical contribution of the graduate students who are teaching assistants. Because as you very well know, again, you are operating in these very unprecedented conditions, and we truly appreciate everything that you're doing to be able to manage the business of education and research at the University of Minnesota under these constraints. You are colleagues in the process that we follow within scholarship as well as education, and your contributions are greatly appreciated. Thank you. I do, as I said, I will just say a few more words and then we will go on with my colleagues with a few other sets of information, hoping that we'll have a chance to answer your questions that you may have. I do want to highlight one other thing in terms of the social justice issues that I just mentioned. Our departments, and in particular, have been extremely busy this past summer, having meetings, having a lot of brainstorming, as of course has the college and various other units across the University of Minnesota. And what I do know and what we hear from the leadership of our departments is that our graduate students quite often have been leaders and highly engaged in these conversations and in the ideas that have been put forward and will continue as we will work towards a more just society, racially just situation that we all will be living and operating under. Highlighted within that group, of course, is the College of Science and Engineering Diversity and Inclusivity Alliance. The Alliance, as many of you know, is a collection of faculty, staff, graduate students, undergraduate students, administrators, postdocs, really the full complement of the community within the College of Science and Engineering who get together, spend time, and really try to, and the college is extremely supportive of all of your efforts to improve the climate and culture within the College of Science and Engineering, and by extension, broadly within the science, technology, engineering areas that we all operate under that have had historical challenges with underrepresented groups. So I really appreciate everything that you have been doing in contributing to all of these conversations and ideas that have been put forward. And let me stop now at this point and ask Associate Dean Longmire to add some comments, and we'll continue and come back with our conversation. Welcome again to Fall 2020, my very best wishes for good health and safety for all of you and success in your studies research. Helen?
Thank you very much, Moss. And thanks everyone for attending. I know that if you have already been a student here starting before this semester, you've been getting a barrage of emails over the last 6 months from many sources, and sometimes it's hard to keep them all straight. One thing I want to say is that Rhonda Zern, who's on this webinar, has really made an effort to consolidate different sources and links on our CSE website, including links directed specifically at grad students. So we hope this is a helpful resource for you to try to gain clarity on various issues as they evolve. And I'd like to address a couple of points that have come over the summer. One, we had sudden directives and confusion about visas for various of our international students. And one thing I want to say that backs up what our president has said is we really support our international students. And with regard to any visa situation, we're trying our hardest to support our students, and we are working in concert with our staff at ISSS. So if you're an international student, I know you've been in communication at various times with that staff. And they tend to work hard to be on top of any situation that develops, and we try to communicate with them. If there's anyone that's experiencing difficulty with visas, please let me know, and we can try to help you out. Another issue that has come up or I've heard questions about from students has to do with spending time on campus. So I know that many of you, through your research from time to time, are required to be on campus to work in labs and advance your research. I know that many of you have gone through this research sunrise process, and I've been asked about, well, how does that change now that we move forward with this semester? We're going to have more students on campus taking classes, and in terms of TAs, offering classes at times or supervising in labs. And an important point to keep in mind is most of us will continue to be remote, and that includes faculty and staff, as well as grad students through this semester. And we're following this directive from the president of the university. So in terms of our campus buildings, at least what I've observed is there hasn't been a big change inside the buildings in the last week, where people that are there to do research are continuing in the same mode. Some classrooms are being used in some buildings, but many of our classes are remote. So I don't think we're seeing a radical change in the environment in the buildings. And I think Joe can address the idea that we're still trying to follow all safety protocols with respect to COVID and prevention of spread of COVID. And I'll say as well, I know that certain CSE staff have been meeting all summer with people in facilities to try to ensure safety within the buildings. So those are a couple of key points to reinforce what our Dean Moss Cave already discussed. Within our graduate programs and our graduate populations, something that we really care about is having as ideal a climate as possible in supporting our students in their interactions with one another and also with faculty and staff, everyone else within departments. And we are trying to work with department heads, with representatives of every one of our programs that is in each department that is a representative grad student that we're supporting to help support climate and diverse groups, both in terms of climate and recruiting and ensuring success. So I think that's all I'll talk about right now, and I'll pass it to Joe Constan, who's our Associate Dean of Research. Thanks.
Thank you, Ellen. I'm just going to take a moment to remind people, we want to spend as much time as possible on your questions. We can only do that if you submit your questions. And so if you have questions you'd like us to address, go to the Q&A button at the bottom. You can send a question in there, and we'll have teams of experts working on it around the clock, or we'll just answer it. A couple of words about what we're doing to try to help keep you active in research, and a couple of the common things that I know we've been asked along the way. From early on in the COVID-related first closure and then slow reopening, we've been delighted that research has been continuing in this college and in all of our departments, only with minor interruptions and in some cases with no interruptions at all. Many of you discovered what it's like to work from home, and we appreciate the challenges. We appreciate that for many of you, you'd really love to be back in the office with your fellow grad students and with faculty right nearby, and you know, we all thank you for the fact that your understanding of that the current health situation just doesn't make that possible. We need to have low density in the buildings in order to keep the people who have to be there safe. We had graduate students and faculty and some of our staff working from the very first days on COVID-related research projects, from new personal protective equipment, both worn and enclosures, to testing of spaces for aerosol deposits, to testing devices that might neutralize COVID in the air, to testing whether you can rapidly assess COVID from blood, from breath, from other things. It was just wonderful to see the creativity of our researchers, and those are our researchers are graduate students, faculty, and staff, who came together and said, we know we can do something here that will help. Let's do something significant. And those efforts have been really phenomenal, and in many cases are leading not just to things that we use here, but to practices that are being taken on in other parts of the country. So we're thrilled about that. We have moved forward in this Sunrise program where over 1,000 graduate students in the college are authorized to be back on campus at least part of the time for access to labs, specialized equipment, and specialized facilities. Many of you are using our shared facilities in research centers, which reopened quickly. Others are using labs, which our departments quickly put together safety plans for. And we've been remarkably pleased with the ability to carry this out safely. We continue to approve new people as the need comes up. It has slowed down substantially, but a large share of the people who are working from home are people whose work can be done on simulators, in software, and in other ways that don't require field work or lab work. We've also made the transition that's particularly relevant to some of you in particular fields, where we've reopened field work, at least in places that can be gotten to by car or within North America, though we've still suspended international travel, or international air travel in particular. So we're making progress. People have asked about, you know, the safety situation, but people have also asked the flip side, which is, you know, do we know when we're going to have people able to use their offices, you know, relieve their roommates of the burden of hearing them on Zoom calls, in some cases, relieve their children of the burden of seeing mom or dad at work while they're trying to carry out studies and their own remote learning. And we don't have an answer for you. We're following the state's guidance from the governor, which is still those who can work from home should work from home. We've put in accommodations for people where there are special needs that require being on site. That includes work that can be done through our Disabilities Resource Center. When there are special cases, it has included certain special cases where people have needed, for a short-term project, high-speed internet access, direct access to large displays and other things. But we're simply not ready to bring people back wholesale quite yet. We're closely following the governor's announcements. The university president has made it clear she's working closely with the governor's office to figure out how we can continue to keep people safe and keep people productive at the same time. And the last thing that I'll mention, because it's been brought up in parts of these aspects, are the unique challenges that are facing some of our international students. You know, we're not blind to the fact that this is not just the COVID-related restrictions on travel. The universities come up with mechanisms that enable us to work with students who can't get the visa to come here because there's, you know, no consulate or embassy open at the time, or because of travel restrictions. But we're also in a time now, particularly for many of our students from China, where the US government restrictions in attempts to isolate US research from Chinese military and Chinese government agencies has made it more difficult for students who want nothing more than to come here, get a good solid education, and then practice that education. We're working diligently to comply with the law, but do everything we can to support the students that we have here already, and to keep a pipeline coming of students from top quality universities in China and around the world. We recognize that's a source of strength for us as a university, as a college, but also as a state and a nation. And we just want you to know that we recognize that. We have the offices together with ISSS, and we work with our export control and our legal offices wherever necessary to clarify exactly what we can do and what we have to do with respect to our students who come from overseas. With that, Paul, is there anything you wanted to add about what's happening in the undergraduate program or with our TAs?
Yeah, maybe, yeah, thank you, Joe. Maybe just emphasize one, I think, very important point. As you may or may not know, about 60+% of our courses, our undergraduate courses in the college, will have some limited face-to-face meeting. The most important thing to remember is the metric, which is really two components, is 6 feet and 15 minutes. So if you, as an instructor, can work diligently to make sure. So, so what the point being is that if a student becomes ill, and let's hope that doesn't happen. That was me. Sorry about that. My son is trying to get married in a week, which is not easy in COVID. So he keeps bothering me, but that's not a bad thing. So the part off topic, the bottom line is that if a student becomes ill and that student is identified as having been within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, then contact tracing will be necessary, and you as an instructor could be pulled in to that communication channel. If, however, you can work diligently to keep students separated with masks on, I'm talking about masks on here, and keep them out of a 6-foot radius for less than 15 minutes. If you can maintain that, then there would be no contact tracing required. Now, my understanding is the 15 is an integrated time. So in a 3-hour laboratory, if students are within that 6-foot distance for 2 or 3 minutes or 5 minutes, and they do that multiple times, that would constitute a criticality, in which case contact tracing may be required. So again, 6 feet and 15 minutes is considered a condition requiring us to keep track of students and the contact they have with other students and perhaps instructors, and that would include you. But certainly, I think Elizabeth has questions, anyone, and certainly this is the time. Fire away, do not be shy. It's easy, it's not, you can be shy on Zoom, no one's gonna know it. So it's a great format to just, send your notes our way.
Elizabeth, do we have any questions?
I'm afraid you're muted.
This is classic, the Zoom mute button, I tell ya. They said it's not a Zoom meeting without mute issues. No, I was gonna just bring one that's come up in some other forums, and that is what the university is doing to support parents and other caregivers in this time.
Ellen, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, I'll comment on that. So I would say the university is trying to support student caregivers in several ways. And what I want to say, and I'll have to look for, is there's a specific website you can look at if you are a student caregiver that lists different support mechanisms, including financial support that you can apply for. What else we are trying to do is we're trying to encourage, through our departments and programs, essentially lowered expectations for caregivers that may be acting, for example, as TAs or RAs and having difficulty completing tasks. And what else I want to say specifically is for student caregivers that are suddenly facing new difficulties in covering, taking care of children or other relatives. As we move into this semester, we also have an emergency funding mechanism that you can apply for. And you will get a very rapid response if you apply. So now I'm gonna have to look for those web links, and I'll try to provide them in the chat. Okay.
Great. We have another, is that all for that one? Did anybody else have anything to add? No. Okay, we have another question that's come in, and this is about student fees. This person is asking how a campus closure would affect the fees.
Well, it certainly depends on the fee, but it does not. The services that we provide are essentially the same. In some cases, it's actually more costly. The level of investment we've had to make as the university and the college in IT infrastructure and additional setups. This doesn't apply to this group in particular, but let's say if there are any TAs from the chemistry department or physics, you may be aware or you may have been part of the group that has put together kits for some of our laboratories that are being now offered at a distance. So the overall cost structure for everything that we're providing, if anything, has gone up. It has not gone down. So it's accessibility is all there. So for example, one of the things that is, you probably know about it, but you should be aware, is that some of the computer labs have been kept open. And Jim, if there's anything else that you wish to add to that.
Yes, in addition to the labs being kept open, we also have invested in certain laptop loans that we can make, or if you have trouble with your internet, we have some hotspots that you can use through a cell phone. So if you know of a student who's an undergraduate, or if you as a TA have an extenuating circumstance, please get in touch with CSE IT. Send mail to the CSE help@umn.edu, and we will talk with you and try to find a way to make everything work. So that's another investment the college has made to help us through this time, I guess.
Right.
All right. Another question that we have is whether the college is setting up any opportunities for grad students to continue their networking during this time.
It's a good question. Ellen, is there a conversation in that area or within the graduate school overall? Networking for
Sorry, I'm working on this link. So I will say that through CSE, historically, we've offered opportunities related to hearing from diverse alumni at lunches, and we plan to continue those. Those will all be done via Zoom. We're also planning additional activities that cross over all of our programs. Unfortunately, they all have to be through Zoom. And we are supporting within departments local networking through our grad coordinators. So those are a few opportunities that I see going forward. In addition, we will be working together with Dean Strykowski's office and efforts that they put together related to networking, for example, with some companies from industry, where we're going to collaborate on those events.
I think I would add, since we already talked briefly about it, that the CSE Diversity and Inclusivity Alliance has had already during the summer had a number of events where anybody can attend certainly, and have conversations broadly in many respects, but a lot of it is really in terms of support. It's to help with against feelings of isolation, in fact, in support of mental health issues. In some ways, which I would highlight, this is a stressful situation for many of us. And we should really first and foremost be aware of those kinds of pressures, and that there is a lot at the university that can be helpful in that respect, both centrally within the university, but also through communication with your advisors, with the department, graduate offices, with our office and others. It's a critical thing to be aware of. There's just a lot more support available. It's never enough, but there's a lot more support available now. That certainly didn't exist when I was a graduate student. Some of us go back a very long time. I don't know if it's Paul, but in my case, when I was working on my PhD, I had a family as well. We had a young child, and we had to manage everything that we did in very, very creative ways. And granted, we weren't faced with this kind of situation with the limitations that the pandemic places in front of us. But creativity is all over the place. And in those days, there was absolutely no support. Of course, at the universities that were particular to students who were parents. There was married student housing. That was the extent of support that we could have. So please do take advantage of all of these. Reach out, get engaged, and please don't stay isolated. I mean, that's really the best advice I can give.
I see Rhonda may be answering this online, but there's a question regarding the career fair. And yes, we will have a career fair. It will be a virtual event, and but it will be very well attended. And it is going to be a little bit later, September 29th and 30th. So please participate. Even if you're not graduating immediately, it's always good to get the heartbeat of what companies are looking for, also graduate programs. If you're thinking you're finishing a master's or considering a PhD, these are certainly things that you can go to faculty for, but professional staff also can help you navigate the working world if that's where you're heading next. But again, it will be a virtual fair this year, but it's going to be lively, and there'll be interviewing and all of the pieces that go along with a typical career fair. And we expect many companies from all over the country interviewing our students, and yes, at the master's and PhD level as well.
Great, thank you. So those are all of the questions that we've received in the Q&A so far. So if anybody has anything else, please do submit it. Otherwise, I will open it back up to the panel if anybody has any more thoughts or any other questions that they've received that they'd like to address.
I think one of the things I like to point out is you may have noticed if some of you have had face-to-face classes, these are graduate courses, that they have stayed on track to continue that way. And the reason for that is because as other institutions have opened up and as universities have looked at the behavior of the students and how these have impacted particular cases of hotspots, so to speak, and flare-ups in COVID cases, that generally these have not, I mean, it's a generalization, but generally it has not been because of the behavior of, let's put it that way, more advance more mature students. And because of that, that was an intentional thing on behalf of the graduate courses, that thinking that the majority of the students in graduate courses are graduate students and have a different set of perhaps sense of responsibility and care about social distancing and following the suggested safety standards and everything, that we felt pretty confident that we could keep the graduate classes open. Now, if things become something completely uncontrollable and out of the capacity of the community, or if the governor changes the matters for us because of that, those will be flipped as well. But we're also hopeful that that won't be the case. So thank you for behaving. I guess that's that's my comment.
All right, we did get one more question. They are asking whether or not we would be moving completely online after Thanksgiving. Apparently there have been rumors about that.
That we will do what?
Moving completely online, or yeah, after Thanksgiving.
That's a given.
I think the question is, will that also be true for the small graduate courses, or are they going to be allowed to continue face-to-face?
There might be rare exceptions.
There are rare cases where that may happen, but
I
for the most part, yes, they're all going to be online. I mean, it remains to be seen how things evolve, but that's the current plan.
All right, well, we don't have any more questions that have been submitted. So anybody has anything else to add? All right, well, should we?
Well,
There is a new question.
we can say on all of our behalfs again, our very best wishes for this semester and beyond, in your studies, in your research, in what you're doing. Thank you again for what you're doing as well in educating our other students as TAs. Stay well, reach out to us if we can help in any way. And my very best wishes to you all. We're all in this together as a community.
Well, now that you've given your closing remarks, we do have another question. So this person is asking if we foresee further sudden loosenings of restrictions on campus. So they give the example of seeing elevators become multi-occupancy overnight with no warning, asking if any of these sudden changes are coming up in the future, and can they request more advanced warning, preferably a week or more.
Perhaps I can help with this one. The elevator situation was not a sudden loosening of restrictions. It was a case where several of our units imposed stricter guidance than the university policy. And the guidance had always been to allow higher occupancy, and at a certain point that clicked in that people started enforcing it. But the broader question that you're asking, will some of these changes come quickly? I think the answer is, when we have knowledge that a change being made quickly will be helpful, yes. The requirement for masks campus-wide didn't come with, oh, spend a week not wearing a mask and then you have to put it on next week. It was a decision that once it was made by the president, the right thing to do was to start implementing it right away. If the best science we have about COVID and how it's transmitted suggests that our current 6 foot, 15-minute wear a mask strategy isn't the best strategy for classrooms, for labs, otherwise. I think as soon as we know that, we're going to try to put changes in right away. And yes, that's difficult. It can be difficult for everyone involved, but we're going to do the things that we think keep people the safest as best we can. And I think that's led to another question that's popping up.
Yes, this person is asking how masks are being distributed to those who have not yet returned to campus. They want to make sure that they have them before they go to campus.
Well, I can tell you, so my understanding is all new students, that would be new undergraduates and new graduate students, were to be mailed masks. Now, all returning undergraduates are going to receive masks through my office. My understanding was that all returning graduate students, and even a graduate student who has not received a mask in the mail, will be receiving 2 masks from their departments. And so it's very critical that you contact your support services in your department. That could be the director of graduate studies. It could be an administrator, but find out what your individual department is deciding to do to deploy and distribute those masks.
Right.
All right, I did actually just get a note from someone in the finance department saying that grads are done all through their home department, so not new grads.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected. Thank you.
Just to clarify, but yes, I would say check with your department first.
Yep.
Does anybody else have anything to add? All right. Well, I think we are okay with concluding early then. Thank you again.
Thank you.